Clip. All right, I think we're Mr. Fariborz. How are you this morning? Good.
Good morning, Mark.
All right. So I'm super excited about this this cast today. Getting to get everybody to. I've talked about you all the time in my school and the influence you had on my life. So the stories that you have. I'm looking forward to this hour we get to spend together, and you get to bless some other people with your wisdom and your knowledge. I mean, you've been around for quite a long time, and I'm looking forward to some of these stories that you have on your own school and what we've done together as we've grown gray beards together over the years. You know, we used to be the young pit bulls, and now we're the junkyard dogs, right?
Yes, sir.
But so, all right. So what I'm going to ask first, Mr. Fariborz, let's. I've introduced you from as Sensei or Master Fariborz, as we call you, and we'll talk about why you don't like that title. I hate that title, just so you know. I've always have. And then you go to the Grandmaster title, and it's just like, man, all that sounds like is I'm a great grandfather. You know what I mean? So we'll talk about that. But let's start with where you're from and how you came here, because you know how your parents got you here and how we got to be blessed to have you in the United States. Let's start with that.
Well, I was born in Middle East, in Tehran, Iran, and I was born. My dad was in the army, and he died. Well, he was killed when I was less than 6 months old. So I never met him. I don't have a point of reference of my dad. But I grew up with some very powerful, strong women. So my mom was only 28, and I'm the youngest one of 6 kids. So she imagine a 28-year-old woman with 6 kids, single, you know, in Iran, right, in the Middle East, you know. And so so I had a great childhood, you know, till I was, I don't know, about 10 or 11, or maybe a little bit more, till I got introduced to Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon. And that just took me to a whole different level. My first love of my passion was music, because I was playing guitar. I loved playing classical guitar. And then still with the martial arts. I took a little bit in Iran, not as much. It was hard Japanese systems. Then I had an opportunity to come here to the United States. I think 79. I think it was a week after the revolution in Iran. It was 78 or 79, I think, is when I came to U.S. and stayed with my brother and started learning English from scratch. And went to Santa Maria. I was there for about a last year of high school. Then came to L.A. and somehow or another we got connected to, I moved to the Valley and connected to Steve Sexton, which had a Hapkido school on Topanga, and that's where the whole, martial arts kind of journey kind of started, But yeah, I think the hardest thing was learning English was really difficult for me. I really worked hard on, I didn't want to have a thick accent. So I really, I took Toastmasters and I took classes for, being able to speak better. I love public speaking. So I really I took classes. I've always taken classes, and I still do, coaches about how to communicate better, how to speak better,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, and ever since then I've been into martial arts.
So did you do any other work before you decided to have a school? What your background? Did you go to school here? Did you graduate college here?
No, actually I went to UCLA. I studied computer science. I'm a computer geek. I used to be a lot more. And then So I did some graphic arts for a company for a little bit. Then I just, I think I got my black belt in 82, 81 or 82. And ever since then,
Yeah.
started teaching martial arts.
Yeah. So Steve Sexton was your original Hapkido instructor, which he was, down in, I believe was he in Woodland Hills too? Has he always been in the Valley, right?
Yeah, in Canoga Park. It was right on,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't know. I kind of remember. I don't know if I remember kind of a corner building. Or was it just in a strip mall or something? Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was in a shopping center.
I just remember.
Right on Topanga and Van Nuyen. Well, there's a martial arts school there now.
Right. There's a martial arts school there now. That's right. That's correct. That's what it was. So I remember, so you got your black belt 81, 82, and this is about the time I started martial arts, right? So we're in this martial arts world together. As you know, you're a little before me because I got started later in life, to do martial arts. And I was telling you, pre-show what that was for me when I was in competition, because in the Hapkido school, Fariborz is in that Hapkido school was where to go to compete if you wanted to show off your self-defense, because Hapkido was all the throwing and the joint locks and everything else and what that was. And I went there and competed, and I remember a couple things that you did that day. So these are the stories I'll tell you that I remember about you and how I kind of gravitated towards you. I was the only one there from another school. Nobody came and really watched me compete. I just kind of did it on my own, and I was the only one there. And I competed, and I didn't win. I was either the first loser or second loser. I don't know which one it was, second or third place, whichever loser I was at the day. But I wasn't first place. And so you just stopped the whole thing. And you brought me out. I don't even know if you remember this. I remember this stuff because these are things that are ingrained in my head. And I was lower rank at that time. I was probably a green belt. And you just stopped the whole thing. And you gave me acclimates for come to a school that I didn't know anybody at, and congratulated me and had me continue, stay there as my guest today, watch the rest of competitions. And that's how you did it. Now, who does that to a lower rank? And I just remembered that. I just remember that vividly, that thing. So that's one of those stories about me. And then eventually how I came around to you. So you can say hi to Jason Flame. He just popped on, and my coach is on here. As a matter of fact, I told you I'm getting a podcasting coach. This is Larry. He's it right there. This is Larry Roberts, and we have another David Starachi. He's one of our Tong Soo Do black belts. That's saying hi to you also. So after this now, so Mr. Fariborz, after I did this, so, being from your background, and I've watched you over the years, and I always come and talk to you and stuff at your schools. And then I decided, I came to you, I went to my instructor, I went to Mr. Chikawa, and I said, hey, I'm a 4th degree black belt at this time. So I didn't do anything until after I got my master's rank in one art. And luckily, my instructor kind of let me kind of veer off to things so I can bring stuff back to the school. What I felt was, I just never felt Tong Soo Do had good self-defense stuff. I just didn't. He let me go and then at 4th, I wanted to get something else because we were lacking for what, now in the old martial arts world, where I was lacking for what do we do to help these lower ranks and black belts after black belt, outside of, okay, start teaching class, and oh, by the way, here's your next form, and that was it. And I couldn't do that, so I came to you and asked, I'd like to get a black belt. And the reason I sought you out is because of you, for one, and second, I didn't have to learn a bunch of forms again. You know what I mean? That was a huge thing to me. I was like, I want to know these joint locks, I want to know these wrist locks, and then of course we learned 4-directional form and all this kind of stuff. And then I spoke to you and said, hey, and then you helped me develop this curriculum. So we've adopted everything that you've done, just so everybody knows it's online. Everything we do after black belt came from Mr. Fariborz. We still do nunchuck form 1 and 2. We still do 4-directional form. We do 4-directional form with staff. We do, well, you know, the cane form. I mean, it's hard to beat Mr. Carlin doing cane form, right?
Yes, sir.
Especially when I'm playing when I'm playing the taiko drums and he's doing that cane form. There's just nothing more like it. And so that's where all this came from. So the so my question for you when we did all this is in 1994 is when I got a black belt with you. Tell me how you came about because it was such an auspicious occasion where you rented. You'd never seen anything like it, right? You were an innovator back in the time. We would rent. You'd rent the hotel, and we on this big stage. And then this is the kind of man you were, just so you know, Ms. Fariborz, so I can give you some more acclimates. You said to me, you said, why don't you do something with Mr. Ichikawa, my main instructor? Why don't you bring him and why don't you perform with him? And so you allowed me on my black belt testing day to bring our instructor, and Bo and I tested, and that you allowed Mr. Ichikawa to come and be a part of that. Just the man that you were. So how did you act? How did you come about to want to do big stage black belt testings like that, and this moving process that some of those things that you had us do? I kind of remember this rowboat thing that you had us do. If we had to, if we had to throw somebody over, that was brutal, by the way. How did you come about doing that?
Well, in my early stages, I was exposed to a lot of experimental learnings. I remember I took classes called PSI, stands for people synergistically involved. Then I was involved in, EST, then became LifeSpring, then the Forum. So I've always been involved in those classes. And I love, me personally, I learned by experience. By experiencing things. So I knew that I wanted a bunch of experiences for becoming a black belt. I loved, my black belt test, but, was, I don't know how was yours, but the panel sitting and, you just do your thing and afterwards you get your
Right.
black, which was wonderful, but, I remember going to one of my students had a dealership and it was a Ford dealership and they had an annual banquet or something, and they invited me and I went and it was in a hotel. It was in Hilton. And I just sat there and I went, these guys have such an incredible event. Nothing against car salesmen. I mean, I don't have anything against them, but they had such a big event to give awards for. They made it an experience for people who sold the most cars and the dealership, whatever, but it was an incredible, touching event, very first class. And I'm thinking to myself, they only sell cars. I mean, they're not, doing what we're doing with people. They're not, are we providing a vehicle for people to grow emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, and why don't we have stuff like that, once or twice a year? And what better way of, achieving your black belt, having all these experiences, So that's where I came up with the idea, and I didn't make any of the experiences up. Just the experiences and lessons have been around forever, I just took them and I put little processes into them so students can go through them. And storytelling is one of the oldest ways to communicate. So I took some of the stories and some of the lessons, and this is at the same time where I got. I didn't want to make shit up. I said, what I have, we're in Southern California. We have access to some of the best in the world of martial arts. From any kind of culture, the best of them are here. So I seek them out. I literally, just one thing I'm very proud of. I've literally have trained with the best in the world in most systems, and I love that. And many of them taught me what to do, and many of them taught me what not to do. But either way, they taught me. I was
Right. Yeah.
lesson. Like I said, some do this, some make sure you don't do this. And that's where the whole idea of the black belt test, an exam experience was coming up. And this is around the time when I was with EFC, and EFC was, pushing the black belt spectacular, big thing. But I mean, I like the show part, but I wanted something more ahead of time. So I came up with the idea of the pre-test. I wanted people to attain something non necessarily martial arts. I wanted people to have experiences. Like, it was very important to me that on the same day, people go to the Museum of Tolerance, which is about the Holocaust, at the same time go to Self-Realization Center on Sunset about extreme peace, because I wanted people to have the experience of, here's the extreme violence, here's extreme peace. And so I came up with a bunch of these little things like rock climbing. The whole idea, I don't care if people rock climb, but the whole point is I introduced them to the idea of being in the moment and being somewhere where you can't think about anything else except that moment. Then we talk about perceptions, but through experiences. Then I had other instructors come in and teach and expose the students to different arts, for every pretest. So we had, qualification exams and pretest, but I did stuff like, during the, and it just gives me goosebumps, but during the process was one of our ground rules. Well, first of all, is to have ground rules, and all the students are supposed to make their bed every morning, and you'd be amazed from all the stuff that I've done. I still get calls and emails and texts from students who, in the last, 20, 30 years who've gotten black belt from me. And some of them are still making their bed. And they go,
That's awesome, right?
You know what I mean? And it's like, I still do that because that was a ground rule. I had to do it, Then I had ground rules where they couldn't drink during the exam process. I'm very proud to say I have 3 people who were alcoholics. They were functional alcoholics. And because of the black belt exam, they stopped. So I mean, there was some of this stuff. Every little move was calculated. I said, what can I do to improve people's life? And not necessarily on martial arts level, because what we're getting attacked on right now is not necessarily somebody else. It's obesity, it's what we eat, is movements in stress and bad relationships. You know what I mean? So I said, what can I do?
Right.
Not teaching him, not preaching him, but give him some ideas. Hey, you got to read this book. What you do with it is yours. Bruce Lee said, it's like a finger pointing to the moon.
Right.
I provided a bunch of fingers. Right. I said, don't think about all this. If this is yours,
you did.
So if you like, we made a few of the books that are important to me. I'm like, go read this book. Whatever you do with it, it's your thing. But the result of it is coming back now. I mean, teens are going, I have to read another book. What does that mean? 7 Habits for Teens. But now I'm getting results
right.
saying, God, if it wasn't for that book, or seek to understand before you understood, I mean, people are like getting that, like, oh my God, I got that, And so when we ask, and here's my ultimate goal, I said, my vision is, what do I want for my black belt test? What I wanted was, I want somebody who gets a black belt here is to be able to say, and I'm very proud to say that myself. I hope I don't come across conceited, but there's nothing I can't do. Give me enough time and instructions. And that's such a great, empowering feeling that, what I mean? For years, I've watched people, you go somewhere, somebody play piano, you're like, oh my God, I wish I could play. But guess what? I can play piano. Like I said, give me enough time and instructions, I can do that, Now, I might choose not to do it, but it's only a choice. It's not because, there's no way I could do it. I'm too old, I'm too this, So that's what I wanted, a black belt to be able to say, I can do anything, and so far it's worked. It backfired a few times here and there, but I mean, I can't be successful in every case. But the people who I'm in touch with for the last 30 years, what they're remembering is all the stories, all the experiences. Nobody's remembering basic form number 4. Nobody's remembering the wrist twist, but they, they do remember these experiences, and in that time, even when I was doing it, I'm like, oh my God, people are gonna laugh at me, this stuff, But you know what? Guess what? It's working. During the COVID, we started saying, guys, go create a vegetable garden, and do something at home, Let me see you guys cook. I want to know how many of the people can cook. And you'd be amazed. I'm getting, I got pictures, and I got invited to people's homes, and they literally have vegetable gardens. The kids never ever.
That's awesome, right?
So we came up with, and the whole idea was from, the idea of getting out of your 9 dots, which is a Team Karate Center's logo. Let's let's get out of the way, the norm, and think outside the box, literally. And so we came
That's
up
a
with
we
the
still
idea.
do that. We still do that. We still do the 9 dots.
Yeah, I
Matter
mean
of
that.
fact, I just did it with some special needs kids out in Georgia. I said, and it was we still do that. And your pretest, Mr. Fariborz, I told you before that there's another story. I'll tell you. We were in second pretest with you, and this is I believe we were on a run and a hike at Pierce College, and you had a student that was so rude, man. I wanted to just choke the life out of him, right? And I'm like, why you let him talk like this, man? Why don't you let me have at him? I said, I'll teach him some respect. And you said to me, you said, I could force it. I could force him to do it. But if I force him to do it, he's not going to learn and not going to change on his own.
No.
It has to come from within. I'll never forget that lesson that day. This is you and I walking. I wanted to just plow that kid, man. I was like, let me have at him, Mr. Farber. He's so rude to you, he's just disrespectful. And I'm like, it'd take me literally 2 minutes to make him suffer for a minute, and then I'll put him to sleep. Right. And you're like, no. And then, and I've learned that even with my own children, that one lesson, Mr. Farber, I've had that same thing with me trying to force my kids to do something when they need to do it on their own, because that's when the growth happens. So it was a really good lesson that day for me. And those are those little things that happened, with you. I have another student here online. His name's John Morrell. He works with somebody. He talks about it quite often. He works with somebody at work that's a student of Sensei Fariborz, a 2007 black belt that still makes his bed, he says. It's funny. What's funny is I still make my bed. That's the first thing I do every day. I don't leave without my bed being made, and that all happened there. I told everybody else that, I see our pretest, our first pretest, Mr. Farber, is very hard to pass. I've made it, if you don't work and you can't do these things to a T and attention to detail, you will not pass your first pretest. The way it used to be, old school, like, we didn't do things. You miss a key eye, you fail your test, that type of. I wanted people to be able to experience either A, you've done so much work that it's a game that either you're gonna pass this test and show me up, or you're gonna not. And many people fail the first pretest at my school. I set it up that way on purpose so people can experience failure. And then I tell everybody too,
which is a lesson by itself.
Correct. Right? Correct. And today's parents, that's a very hard lesson for them to learn. I cannot tell you the coddling that goes on. Mm-hmm. And so, trying to experience that, because I don't know. All the stuff I've ever won, it's the major lessons of my losses and my ego is where the lessons learned. And so I tell everybody this story one time, because when Bo and I were going through the process, I've gone through the ground rules. We have almost the same exact ground rules. You've allowed me to keep your manual, and that's kind of what we use. And then, interject our curriculum to it. But if you remember, the ground rules is, if you're late for class, you have to get up in front of class and you have to apologize because it wasn't important enough to you. You remember that ground rule? That ground rule still stands today. And so I'll never forget this. You're in Woodland Hills and you're upstairs in your office, and Bo and I are in front because we're kind of a higher rank. And so you had us in front, and we are there always 15 minutes early, warmed up, ready to rock and roll. Somebody shows up late, and we're just standing in line waiting. And you come down the stairs and you get in class, and we bow kind of in, and you said, once again, I can't remember which one it was late. You don't care enough about this process, so I don't care enough about teaching it today. And you left and went right back up to your office. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, oh, man. I said, what are we supposed to do? So all we could do at the time is Bo and I just kind of warmed him up and we went for the day. I'll remember that lessons. These are these little lessons. I tell everybody about these stories. I said, these are the things in martial arts that happen. And so you have all these experiences. So I think you took all your experiences and you decided, hey, I'm going to write this book. And I know you've been on me for a while. I should have done this through COVID more, but I was so jacked trying to get online to save the school. I didn't have I can't say you didn't have the time, because you have plenty of time, right? I couldn't get past the stress to write a book, right? And so, let's talk about that book you wrote and what that entails.
Well, Open Hands was a series of experiences that I've had with people, mostly with students and some of my people that I look up to, and I just wrote them as stories. That literally the things that happened to me that other people can relate to. Especially if you're not a martial artist, and if you're a martial artist, you could definitely kind of relate to it. But I wanted, most things that are valuable. Um, as you know, they're not new. I wanted, so the one thing I learned from Sensei Benny is the difference, the distinction that he makes between a coach, instructor, and a teacher, and that I wanted to bring the best out of people, and I wanted to awaken something in people. So I wanted the stories to be like when you read it, you go, oh, like I knew that. I've gone through that, instead of saying, oh, that's something brand new. It's nothing brand new. Nothing is new. No lesson is brand new. It just, and in a way it did it because it brought back, something. I think we all have that inside. As you know, there's two ways to make something. You can, to make a statue, you can add up things with clay and you end up with a beautiful statue, or you take a solid piece of marble and you take away things and what stays is good, right? They're both just as valuable, but just in my life,
Right.
I'm more about taking stuff away now. For years, I was into adding things, but now I'm more, like taking things away, including the curriculum, including the systems in my school, including, people in my world, and you just take away things, and what stays is good. I'm, like I always tell people, and that's one of the things that I've coined this word, but you remind me of that all the time. Is I'm a peaceful man. I preach it, I live it, but I'm not against violence, and that's the, what I mean. That's in a way that's kind of like you, right? You're a gentle giant who's like the sweetest little man, and you just so loving, but if it gets down to it, you're the last person that's going to back out of, what I mean? If it's might for right, if it's supposed to be done.
That's correct.
And
Yes.
I've like I said, that's my philosophy. You know what I mean? Steve used to always say, I was trained in so honored to have been trained in two different levels, in two different extremes. Jihan Jay was all about philosophy and life and experiences, and here there's Steve Sexton who he would just would love to hurt people. He would just he had that he had the life experience, and it's like I can't say what was better because I was so lucky to be exposed to both. But I knew if something goes wrong, which one I'm going to go to, right?
That's
it. Right? But at the same time, they introduced me to a whole level of different things. Then I went to different coaches, having, trained in grappling arts with, Higan and with Machado. Then I, trained with, Sensei Benny, which is, one of my living, literally role models in everything that he is and he does, and I've trained with these people, and I tell you, again, I've had many instructors, but only a few teachers, and coaches come and go. Learn something here and here, but
that is
a teacher,
the truth. Yes, the truth statement right there. I've had many instructors, few teachers, and many coaches. That is I've heard you say this for a long time. Hey, I'm not your coach. I'm not here to count off 1, 2, 3. Hey, you're doing a good job and pat you on the back.
Yeah. Right.
And I think we start off as instructors, but then we become teachers, right? Our students, if they're going to stick around and let us become their teacher, they'll let us become their teacher. I think that's probably the truest thing I've ever that I've come across from you, Mr. Fariborz, when you speak about that, because that's where my relationship with you for sure. You're definitely a true teacher. I've made many lessons. Mr. Ichikawa is a true teacher to me. I learned lessons from him also. Life lessons. I was, how I am. I'm a pretty natural tough dude, but man, I needed to be reformed into being a man that that can lead others. You know what I mean? And so I needed all this, and you definitely were that. And some people like to be your teacher. I mean, you and I have experienced a lot of things. We've poured our heart and soul into people's lives, and then they just turn around and leave. Open up schools without the acclimate, and I remember you and I've had some very very hard talks about this, right? Because we've had students do it to us that we pour our heart and soul into, or they don't have to pay for lessons, and then all of a sudden they're gone, or black belts that go off in rogue black belts, and they don't talk about loyalty. And I'm going to hit this little story that in a second on this, but I remember you and I talking, right? And we're like, and I was like, man, I said, it boggles me, and I pour so much time into them. And I remember every time you said, man, I've had the same feeling that I've had to let this go. What's the saying you always said to me? I wish them well. Nah, man. There's something you say all the time, Mr. Fogg.
Leave them to heaven.
Leave them to heaven. That's correct. I want to write that down. Right? Leave them to heaven. And because I think also, Ms. Fariborz, I think just teaching self-defense, teaching how to deal with stress is probably one of the most things that we can do as a martial arts teacher, for sure. Right. And so here's this one story that you told one time, Mr. Chicago, not Mr. Chicago, about your instructor, Steve Sexton, about loyalty, because there was a separation for a while, I believe, because you wanted to kind of do something a little bit different. And I think there was a separation. And you've told this story before, but Steve Sexton came in your school, even though you were not either talking or whatever, you always had your instructors and your teacher's picture on the wall. Always. You remember this story? And then he came in and saw that. Let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, there was a time that I did, I was, out there doing some, whatever that was not proper. And he came one time and took all his pictures out. He just didn't want to have anything to do, and that's where I really learned the value of sincere apology, and the fact that I couldn't talk myself out of something I behaved myself into. I had to behave myself out of it, especially with Steve. But he forgave me in the long run, and he gave me wings. He didn't want to in the beginning, I truly didn't think I don't think he believed that I could do this. And I'm going to say that with conviction. He learned to accept it and be proud of it later. But in the beginning, he even told me, you're not going to make it. You're just not, And but that in a way, I chose that as a lesson, because I got so pissed off. I'm like, I'm just going to do it just to show him, so whatever, everything he did, even though as negative as it was, I always took it as a lesson. And it made me move to the next level, and I wanted to be a teacher, because I want as a responsibility of a teacher, I want to set my students up for lessons, not for right now. I don't want immediate. I want to set you up so 2 weeks from now, 3 months from now, you'll be going, oh, that's what it was. People make such a big deal about enlightenment, but that's what enlightenment is, right? You just feel like, oh, that's what he meant. That's what it is, right? So
right.
You come up with stuff like that. So I set people up, and Sensei Benny does that to me all the time. You know what I mean? He just he does these little things. Then a month or two later, then I'll be going, oh shit, that's what he was talking about, and that's where I get enlightened, But I'm like I said, going backwards again. Like we used to say. The first lesson we teach the students how to stand attention, bow, all this stuff, But in the last year, especially with COVID, all this stuff happening, the first lesson I teach the students now, and it sounds kind of weird, I teach them how to breathe. I tell them, take a breath, take a deep breath through your nose, then let it out. I mean, I'm talking about 5-year-old. Then I ask the parent to do it, because, I just want them to be present. Right? Because if you're not present in the moment, I don't care what it is you want to learn. Stress will kill us all. Just be present in the moment. And the way we do it, by breathing, right? So you just take a long breath. And I hold a 5-year-old hand and I go, breathe with me. Show me you can breathe. and be right now, tell me what's going on. Then something I got from Tom Callis is to check in. Where am I? What am I doing? Is it real? Right? So ask yourself those 3 questions. So when we, even as you remember, when we do forms, you go 1, 2, 3. So we go, so where am I? What am I doing? Is it real? So I think the whole idea of the bowing and some of these physical gestures in the martial arts was to remind us of being in the moment, right?
That's correct.
So important, because if I'm in the moment, then I know what's going on, right? And because I always want to look at what's going to happen based on my experience with what has happened before. So I'm constantly doing this comparison versus just being a moment, right? And I've paid a heavy price for not doing that. I lost, beautiful relationships, because of that, because I wasn't in the moment, or you're after short-term stuff, short-term satisfaction versus long-term. I've learned how to, take lessons in communication, but not communicate with my loved ones, the ones that are really important. I learned how to preach, and then I wasn't doing what I was preaching. So I was hurting the people closest to me just because I wanted to be a preacher. So instead of saying, I don't want to preach anymore, the only way to teach is to be. And I got a long way to go with this, but people will know, people will experience, and they go, there's something different there. And that's what I want. I want to be close to that energy. That's the energy. But I've paid a heavy price. I'm still paying a heavy price for that, having that kind of honor to have that energy with me, right? That people, it draws, right? It literally draws. Imagine this. I talk about this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Imagine a string with 2 steel balls hanging, right? And everything about them is the same. I tell you, tell me the difference. Oh, what is, this color, that color, weighs different. But no, they're all both is exactly the same. But the biggest difference, and it's not visual, it's not available to the eyes. One of them is magnetized. So when you throw a bunch of needles, only one of them take all the needles. And the magnetism, what's the definition of magnetism? Alignment of molecules. So when I'm aligned molecules, and this people practice this obviously through their religion, through connection with God, through whatever they do, or music, or whatever they do. But I think that's goosebumps is a way of aligning molecules. When you get goosebumps, doesn't have to do something with happiness. It has to do with joy. When you have joy in your life, God gives you a little bit of, experience this. You can't voluntarily get a goosebumps. There's no way. But you get a goosebumps as a father seeing your kid sleep, or you're having a cup of coffee in the morning and you're watching. Yeah. I mean, those are the moments that create that goosebump, and that's God's way of saying all your molecules are aligned. Don't mess it up. Don't right. And so alignment of molecules is what I want. I want my life to be that, and because of that, I'm getting to a point that maybe I'll start attracting more energy, more positive energy, better people, because I got rid of some great people I shouldn't have, and I should have gotten rid of some of them sooner. But either way, it's be in the moment, right? And that's what I want. I want to be truthful. I want to be simple, and I want to be real. And I think we missed all the stuff in the martial arts, got so tangled up in what Bruce Lee calls a classical mess, so worried about what color uniform and bowing, all the stuff, versus to forgetting what the symbol of the bow was, what was it, or, making eye contact, simple lessons, but breathing is the most important one. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's
true. Well, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, Mr. Fariborz, where this philosophy side, this was a side that I needed this, where when I came to you, that to kind of balance my aggression per se. And, you're right. Anybody that really knows me is I'm kind of a teddy bear with a grizzly out exterior, but these are the kind of lessons you have, and you're talking about goosebumps, and I just got them because I had it last night. I don't know, just out of the blue. My middle son, I was sitting outside, just kind of going through emails, and he came and sat to the thing and talking to me about kind of his physical he just went through at the medical, and we just had this moment for 10 or 15 minutes as a father and a son, and And then when it was done, it was like, man, I couldn't replace that 15 minutes. And hearing that, giving him goosebumps, I'm like, I can't believe that just happened right now with my 25-year-old. You know what I mean? I'm just sitting there, just going back and forth. And so these are the lessons as a teacher. This is why I enjoyed coming, to you, and the lessons learned on the thing. And hey, listen, you were hardcore at a time when I came through this, and which I needed, and I still think those lessons are valuable today. Whether people pick up on them or not, I guess, like you said, that's on them. You're going to give them a book. You're going to take my teachings, and you're either going to bottle it up and say, "Oh, what a jerk," or "He doesn't care," or whatever, or you're going to take my life experience and learn something from it. And I think you're the same way. We've had these long talks for sure. So we, both of us had schools in the COVID era, right? And we had to make adjustments. What was the biggest change that, what's the biggest growth that you had during your COVID? What's the biggest growth that you had?
I think it was, I could have, and I should have taken a lot more stuff towards myself and do some stuff, but I didn't. I pouted, and I try to blame and get into the stories of why this is, why that is. But when it came down to it, I wanted to see what are the things that I can touch. Having a relationship with my daughter, get into creating vegetable gardens, or try to create some things that are, that I'm in control of, taking more lessons, try to be more mindful than the things I do, and again, getting more clear on the distinction of being a customer, client, and a student. You can walk into a school, including yours, and become a student. You're a customer. And guess what? Customer is always right.
Correct.
If you don't like something,
that sucks.
Right? And we make it up and do whatever because customer is always right. Then after a little bit, you become a client. So there's a little bit more personal relationship. I know what your needs are, and it's different, right? Then when you become a student, it's unconditional. And being a student doesn't mean you still train or not. I consider having some students that are not even in martial arts anymore, but they still consider themselves a student, right? And those are the people during the COVID reached out to me. You know what I mean? And I was, right. we did the GoFundMe page, which was really hard for me to do because it's hard for me to ask for help. And I didn't want it from the martial arts community. I just, it was in a place. But the people who reached out, Mark, is the students from 20, 30 years ago. People reached out that I hadn't seen them or haven't. I hate to say it, I've never haven't been even thinking about them. But these are the people that reached out because they said, we want to help. We want to do something. You know what I mean? It wasn't the people that I thought, oh my God, this student can afford it. He's so rich. He's going to. No, those were not the ones. The ones that, you know what I mean? The ones that I knew that are struggling. Those came up and helped so it reminded me what a valuable thing we're doing. Again, not because of, we providing a way for people to go further in their life. No, I'm not, I don't want to take the credit for it. I don't do it, but I have what I take credit for. I've built a culture, a place where stuff grows. Some of them I cause, some of them it just organically just kind of does it by itself because all these people, right? So we create this culture where, when you see trash on the floor, a customer picks it up and goes to the front and says, hey, there's trash on the floor. Somebody, or doesn't even pick it up, goes and says, there's somebody go pick up that trash. If you're a client, you pick up the trash, then you go come and tell us, hey, by the way, I took the trash. But if you're a student, you pick up the trash, put away. No one even knows about it because you didn't. Right? You didn't do it for the recognition. I got people that go, oh, sir, there's no toilet paper. Then I got people who go, sir, where are the toilet papers? I'll take care of it really quick. Right? Then there's students who it's done. I don't even know who did it. Right? Because we right, having a culture where
that's right.
Private victories are bigger than public victories. right? That validation.
Correct.
We all need
Yes.
validation. I mean, right now you're giving me validation, I'm giving you validation, and which is we massage each other's heart, which is wonderful, you
Right.
know. But to get to a point where you're in you private victories of you knowing, you know, what is that? The good old. What's the distinction between doing something right and doing the right thing? Right? To teach people that and
Yes.
tell people that
Correct.
there is a distinction between that, right? And to bring that out as a conversation, you know, even to the teens, you know. Oh, I got to tell you this experience since you like stories. This just happened to me last night. I got a new student come back after COVID. Sorun, this little, he was like 10 or 11, but he's like 12 or 13 or whatever, and he's a little teen. Came back, so he tried the first class on Monday. Loved it. You know, I was teaching a class, working with no problem. He was a little shy. Yesterday came back. I started a class being the instructor that I am, the male chauvinist and whatever that I am. I decided to do another warm up. So we started doing staff as a warm up. Then I noticed he's here, but he's sitting down in the front. He didn't join the class. So after I did a warm up, you know, I said I'm going to go talk to him. I went over there. I said, You're 10 minutes late, man. What's going on? He goes, nothing. And I said, well, do you care that you're late? He said, no. And here I am, you know, trying to be the man that I am. I'm like, you know what? If you don't care, then I'm not going to care. So you sit here and watch the rest of the class, right? So I'll come back to the class. Then after 10 minutes to myself, I'm going, God, that was not the best way to handle this. That was my ego speaking. So I walked back up, sat with him, and I say, sir, what's going on, man? He goes, and he started getting teary eyes. And I said, I know you love this. What's going on? He goes, I don't know. You guys were holding the staffs in your hand. I didn't know what to do with them. And I'm like, oh, God, you know, like, you know, I set this kid up for failure, you know. So I apologized to him and I said, you know, come with me. You're right. This is something you haven't seen before, and I didn't pre-frame you. So come with me. And I showed him and some of the, you know, stuff that we were doing, and he felt better. And afterwards, I'm like, you know, why do I do this stuff? You know, where, you know, I get the ego jump out versus, be really try to be in the moment and listen to what this kid has gone through. You know, anyway. So I know you laugh at this because a part of you have done this, right? Or I've seen this, and
because I do it
right
every week. I do it. Okay,
these are the lessons that happens every day in this little thing called our culture, our studio with students. And these are the many things that happens in their life, right? So for us to be a little bit more understanding, like my goal is I want my eyes to light up when I see a student coming back. You know what I mean? And when I do that, I'm telling you, the kid just goes up, in the air. But instead of how many students have I walked by and I go, hey, buddy, how you doing? You know, instead of just lighting up and say, hey, you know, you're here, man. I know that, you know, you've been on a Zoom for the last 8 hours on a computer and you're here. And I know you don't want to be, but you're here. And in the high five, man, thank you, you know, or acknowledging that, you know. And so I think it all goes back to
once again. Yeah, it's just once again listening to it. It's still a constant reminder. I fall into the same thing all the time, where I'm so tunnel visioned on something going on in my office. When I kind of go out, I look at the mat, make sure everything's good. Many times I'm like, why? And I go back and sit down, and I'm like, why did I not go and shake everybody's hands, being here or saying hello to everybody?
Yeah,
right. I've done this. I do this on a weekly basis. This is something I've been trying to change in myself forever. And it's not because, oh, I'm better than you or I don't want to talk. I literally have got this tunnel vision. I go and see all the kids and make sure that, classes are running the way I want to see them, and that people can see my face, know that I'm in the background, and I'm, and then, of course I lean back and I'm like, that's really piss poor leadership that I didn't take 3 minutes and go to each of the parents. How you doing? And I constantly do this, constantly. So I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else. Learning these lessons as a instructor as you go, because it's hard. It's really hard because I'm an old school guy. I have old school values. And listen, I had to teach boys how to shake hands the other day because they shake hands like a limp fit. I'm like, what are you doing? What are we doing here in this society? Or we can't, you don't wrestle with your brother, or you don't know how to. I mean, I can't even do self defense technique until I teach them how to do the grab, uh, because they don't wrestle around with each other. You know what I mean? So this old school values I have in this new, I don't know, I don't even know what to call it, but uh,
But
the parenting is different.
let me challenge you on that. And that's the values are values. The principles are principles. We can't, like people say, I want to break the law. You can't break the law. You can break yourself against the law. Principles are principles. Values are values. I think the old school, new school is we need to modify that. I used to, when I teach the hook gig, I used to say, imagine, being in a telephone booth and you reach in, hit the guy, and you come out. Well, I can't use that expression anymore because kids say, what's a telephone booth? You know what I mean? So I
Yes.
think that the value, I mean, the concept is the same. The way we communicate, the way we talk about it is different. So my first thing is when a student is late now, a normal student, not a black belt candidate, instead of doing a push-up, which is one of the horrible things to do in my mind because you associate push-ups with punishment, which is push-ups and pull-ups are one of the most powerful exercises we can do, and we don't want that association with it. That's a whole different thing. But I walk up to them and I grab their hands and look at them in the eye and I go, is everything okay? That's my first concern. And because doesn't matter what we do here, the first ground rule is human first, then martial arts, then laws, ground rules, but human first. Is everything okay? Oh, my there was outside in traffic. My mom, are you okay? All right, take a deep breath. We're gonna walk in. I want you to warm up really quick and join the class, right? Instead of punishing them, because he didn't drive here, the mom did. Then I walk up to the mom. Mrs. Sones, is everything okay? That's not like you, to be late. Just want to make sure everything is okay. Oh yeah, I apologize. No problem. High five. Whatever. But before I used to say, go sit down. And the parent doesn't know what's going on. And in my mind, I'm teaching the kid a lesson, but it's not a lesson. It's more punishment. That kid's been punished all day long.
It's not a lesson.
You know what I mean? It's just punishment, and for us to just communicate, it's better, like the other day, Katana, my daughter, had a friend over and we tried to make something, and which I'm into cooking, by the way. I'm learning how to cook. So we didn't have sugar. And she turns around to me and goes, what kind of house doesn't have sugar? Right? And I looked at her and I went, you know what, sweetheart, let's try to rephrase that, because that came out really like if it was, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to teach this kid about talking like that, right? But, there's another way you could say that same thing, right? Instead of having that,
right,
or that entitlement, whatever it is. Anyway, but, it's a journey, right? I'm learning as I go along with all this stuff, and I'm constantly in the process of sharpening myself and becoming the best version of myself. I think I'm a best version of myself now that I was not yesterday, definitely with that student, but you know what I mean. My constant thing is be a better version, because I paid a heavy price to be here, through relationships, through people, through all this stuff, and I don't want that anymore. I want to be literally a best version of me. And the only thing about that is going to be by being in the moment and be aware of what's going on and where am I, what am I doing? Is it real? Right.
Right. And how uncomfortable is that? Because I've been at the Maya shows when you speak and you say that to people. I've watched people walk right out of the room because they can't seem to get the idea that I need to be present here. They can't get past their own egos to do it. No. So, that.
But you know what? Here's the other thing I've learned, Mark. Excellence is not for everyone, and I know
correct.
And I know it's hard to say it because but the truth is, it's available for everyone, but it's not for everyone. So I just point the way. The fact that and if you get the lesson, I don't want the credit for it, right? And if you didn't get the lesson, I don't want the credit for it. That's something I learned from Dan Inosanto. Like he always says, I'm not proud of any students. He says that, like, and we're like, what do you mean? He goes, what they do with what I give them is their thing. Whatever they do with it, I'm proud of every one of them. I love every one of them. I don't like some of them, but I love every one of them, right? And I just don't want, I provided here. And here it is. Would you like it? Wonderful. What you do with it is your thing. Take all the credit in the world, And like I said, I'm not perfect. I've made so many mistakes, but I'm in the process of just becoming the best version of me, And through relationships like yours, I don't have to talk to you for 3 months, but I pick up the phone and go, hey, Mark, I need some steaks, and it's there. And you don't even charge me for it. You're like, oh, this is, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. You can't teach that anymore, right? Or, we want to call it old school, but let's just call it, it's just values and principles that, there's only a few people that I can count on that if I say there's something wrong, they'll be there. You know what I mean? And so I want more people like that around me,
Yeah, you want it. Yes. And I think that's great. What a great lesson, right? To let children know that you are definitely influenced by your circle of influence.
Yep.
You're going to have people that are going to be like-minded and stick with you through thick or thin. And I have a very small circle that way, and I've got mentors that I go to, and you just happen to be one of them. I value my instructors deeply, all of them. And their insights, doesn't mean we have to agree and think on the same level every time, but it certainly gives me different perspective with life experiences. You know what I mean? So we're getting close to the hour. So I thought, we'd wrap this up with your thoughts on what do you look at now, Mr. Fariborz, as, what is your mission now? Because it's different now that we're at, when I turned 60, that was that was something, right? I remember when you turned 50, you did. I fought you that day too. When on your 50th birthday, you had people all fight for you. Was that your 50th? Is that the time you did it?
50th. Yeah, it was the craziest.
Yeah, right. And then so I did that. Right, I followed your lead, and on my 50th, I did it. And then when I turned 60, I did 12 rounds of grappling. Right. So, what that 12 5-minute rounds. I mean, that was brutal. So I've kept that, I've kept that persona, but now we have this difference. So what's your mission? What's your legacy? What do you want to end with? Let people get some more knowledge of what you think.
I think going back to, I want to be the best person I can be for me, than my kids. I really want to concentrate on my own circle of influence a little bit more. I want to reach out to share what I know with people a little bit more through what we're doing right now. And just get better at become a better version of me. That's my whole goal, and that's what I want to live by. That's what's important to be in the moment and appreciate the people that I have around me and in my mentors also. And just be, like I said, just be in the moment.
Yeah. I think, well, it's always, it's always super exciting to be able to sit and talk. I haven't got to sit and have coffee with you or chit chat like we have here and there. And I'm looking forward to, I'm trying to see if we can get Sensei Benny to get on this and do this with us and get some of his insights on this, on his life, because you have this living legend and people don't really even understand the man's philosophy that you have in your school right there.
I'll make that happen so you guys, we can all communicate. That'll be great.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Fariborz. I hopefully everybody kind of get more of an insight. I love you, and I'm super blessed to have you as one of my teachers, and hopefully we do you proud over here and keep your legacy alive and well over here at
I appreciate you, and I love you a lot. Take care, man.
All right. Bye-bye, sir.
Bye.